Hello, I'm Liam Gaffney, and I'm going to tell you about the conflict in Ukraine. Now, for this video, I'm going to be focusing on four main parts of the issue. Number one, Ukraine's exit of the USSR in 1991. Number two, the start of the more current issue back in 2012. Number three, the state of the current issue. And number four, how nations are now responding to the whole predicament. Now, to start off with number one, a basic understanding of what the USSR actually was is needed. It was founded in 1922 and was a socialist state. It spanned a large portion of Asia into Europe, and it was viewed as a threat to Western democracy from its start to its fall in 1991. When the USSR had eventually fallen, many of the countries within it slowly shifted into democratic, capitalist states. Ukraine, Russia's neighbor, being the last one. The citizens of Ukraine were torn in a sense, where a lot of them felt more Russian than Ukrainian at the end of the day, and created a split contrast down the middle of Ukrainians and Russians. This further complicated the issue and demonstrated the origin of the pro-Russia separatist rebels that would later occupy eastern Ukraine. So now to bring us to point number two, the start of the issue in 2012. Vladimir Putin had just won an election, which was considered to be rigged, and it sparked massive outrage within this section of the world. Whether it be in Moscow or Kiev, there were protests chastising the president for his corrupt actions. With this massive pushback from so many people, Vladimir Putin decided to shift his platform from being more economic-based to a much more conservative, Russian imperial, anti-West standing. This would obviously later affect his actions in the future. Within the following years, there was talks of Ukraine joining the European Union. The Ukrainian government denied this to further strengthen their ties with Russia. However, the people were outraged, to say the very least. There was a massive pushback from the public with mass protests in Kiev. Seeing the government pushed into such a weak place and seeing such anger amongst the Ukrainian people, the Russians took this as an opportunity to seize what they truly wanted, that being land in Ukraine. With this uncertainty in the Ukrainian government, Russia moved to annex Crimea and succeeded in doing so. Within this action, Putin gained a massive popularity boost. A few months later, he would also back pro-Russia rebels within eastern Ukraine who would take a few cities and use them as strongholds against the fight in Ukraine. These being some of the people who ended up considering themselves more Russian than Ukrainian in the populace of the country. While supporting them, Russia ended up funding them and giving them weaponry, some of this weaponry being anti-aircraft equipment. This anti-aircraft equipment would later be used to shoot down and kill every passenger aboard Malaysia Airlines Flight 17. However, over the course of time, the Ukrainian military was able to push a lot of these rebels out of the cities that they had taken, and eventually they reached a stalemate. A ceasefire zone was established, and a treaty called Minsk II was created. This ceasefire area manages to be one of the most violent places in the world, with the ceasefire being violated daily. Now, fast forwarding to the present, our third point. Recently, there was a huge amassing of Russian troops on the Ukrainian border. The New York Post stating that there's over 150,000 in the area. We've also seen heavy military equipment being grouped in with these soldiers as well, this appearing to Ukraine and the Western allies as a threat of imminent invasion. While Russia denies these allegations of invasion, the reality of Russian troops on Ukrainian ground seems realer and realer every day. This creates another really uncomfortable situation for these Western powers, who are now looking as if they're going to get involved in another foreign violent conflict. This leads us to my fourth point. Recently, the Pentagon had put over 8,500 soldiers on high alert as these tensions continue to rise. And the question becomes, will the United States get involved in conflict directly? Now, the Biden administration is likely pointing towards no. Given the issues we have back home, considering infrastructure and COVID, a new war isn't the most appealing to the administration nor to the American people. It's looking as if the US will at the very least give Ukraine weapons and funding, and there might very well be some kind of NATO peacekeeping force deployed in Ukraine. The Biden administration promised that economic sanctions be taken up against Russia in the event of invasion, and they will also be cut out of the SWIFT economic group. And that is essentially the situation evolving in Ukraine. Thank you for listening.